Good afternoon. We want to discuss about assessment for monitoring educational outcomes of students with disabilities. Now, monitoring is a routine process of collecting and recording information in order to track progress towards expected results. An assessment is crucial for monitoring educational outcomes for students with disabilities, as it helps identify learning needs, inform instructional decisions, and track progress, ensuring students receive the appropriate support and achieve their potential. Now, there are key disabilities within learners in schools, like learning disabilities, autism, emotional and behavioral disorders, physical disabilities, and sensory impairments. And we need to accommodate all these kinds of learners in school by inclusive education. So we want to look at thematic areas under this topic today. Begin with the importance of assessment in monitoring educational outcomes for students' disabilities. It helps in tailoring teaching strategies and accommodation. Two, it helps in early identification and intervention. It helps in understanding disability categories. And four, that understanding and supporting individual with disabilities beyond the classroom setting. And also, we need to be aware that disabilities can impact learning, development, and overall functioning in various ways. Now, another thematic area I want to look at is on assessment types for students with disabilities. Other than having the normal formative, diagnostic, and summative assessments, we can also have other assessments known as alternative assessments, like assistive technology in assessment, where we can use tools and software to increase accessibility of assessments for students with disabilities. We can now also have vocal assessments, which can help evaluate students' interests and aptitudes and skills related to potential careers, which includes aptitude tests and work samples or simulations. We can also have an alternative assessment known as a social emotional assessment, which evaluates students' social skills, emotional regulation, and mental health for that matter. Another area of interest in this topic is on the procedures used to assess behavior and personality of students with disabilities. First, assessing disability needs a multifaceted approach. And the goal is to understand the student needs in order to provide appropriate interventions and support. One, we need to identify the function and purpose of the challenging behavior in students with disabilities. Two, we need to help develop a positive behavior support plan intervention, which may include functional behavioral assessments. And thirdly, we need to guide educators in creating effective strategies to reduce problems. So what are these specific ways we can assess personality and behavior? One, behavioral assessment. We can use functional behavior assessment, FBA. And this particular one, identify the purpose or the function of that behavior. Either the behavior is attention seeking or escape from duty or task. And the ways of addressing it. Two is standardized psychological test. An example is the Behavior Assessment System for Children, BASC, which is a comprehensive set of rating scales used to assess a student's behavior and emotions. Then we have another one called behavior rating scales, and a specific example is the Corners rating scale. It is used to evaluate ADHD. Then we have cognitive and neuropsychological assessment, like the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, which helps assessing the cognitive strengths and weaknesses of children with disabilities. Then we have neuropsychological testing, which assesses a variety of brain functions like memory and attention and problem solving. Then the other area of interest is on how to share data, assessment data. with stakeholders. Now, this data, we need to translate it into actionable plans. We need also to inform development of individualized education programs. The data helps teachers and support staff to determine the students' specific needs, strengths, and areas that require attention, focus. Also, the assessment data influences the type of resources that we want. We can include specialized materials for adaptive technology or additional support staff for students with language problems, which could be a speech language pathologist. Also, it affects and guide about appropriate intervention. If a student has been assessed and found to struggle with motor skills, we can offer occupational therapy. It also affects in monitoring progress and adjust instruction based on student response. And it also ensures that assessment leads to meaningful improvements in student learning outcomes. So these are some of the case studies that have been done, and we'll just highlight one or two. For the case study 2, if we need to accommodate a student with autism, what are the interventions? We will use visual schedules and social stories. We will also incorporate sensory breaks and calming strategies. And also we can modify assignments and assessments. Then the last thematic area is on how direct interaction interviews and teacher discussion can serve as assessment tools. When we interact, we can interact with the student by scaffolding, which means we are providing support until such a time that we think the learner has learned or mastered the skill, then we can leave them alone. How do these three, that is direct interaction, interviews, and teacher-student discussion, serve as assessment tools? They provide real-time feedback and observation. And we can also tailor support to meet the learner needs. Interviews. During interviews, the teacher can assess verbal communications in the learner, how they articulate their ideas. The teacher can ask open-ended questions that can prompt learners to give their reasoning and thoughts in more detail. And teacher-student discussions. So during discussions, teachers can observe the depth of student critical thinking and how they can support their opinions with evidence. Then the last thematic area is on the best practices for reporting findings of assessment. When you're reporting these findings of assessment, we need to use clear and non-technical language. You need to use visual aids like graphs, charts, and tables. For example, using a progress graph to show a student progress over time, that they are beginning from here and they are going upwards to this end. And also, as you communicate these, we need to provide recommendations where we thought the learner needed extra help. And we need to communicate regularly so that you don't wait for class conferences or academic days. You can make emails or phone calls to parents. It is important to note when you're sharing this information, you need to be aware of data privacy so that you don't share information with whoever the information is not meant for them. So those were my references. And thank you very much for listening.